Okay, welcome everybody. We are now more or less halfway through Brazil Week. So just to let you know, of course, we started in Curitiba with Jaime Lerner. Then we were very much in Rio with the Oscar Niemeyer film and with Ernesto Neto in the evening. Then last night at the Planning Association was very interesting. Discussion of the Olympics was, I think, a really super event. Now we go very democratic, so we have 3 different cities in Brazil. It's called Young Practices in Brazil. Young Practices means anybody less than 100 years. This is a Rio reference point. And we have asked our good friend Angelo Bucci to make to take over the evening and to make the evening, let's say, a Brazilian evening. Angelo is somebody whose work we deeply admire, and was part of a conference here, I think more or less a year ago, making houses that like a number of architects in Sao Paulo make houses that are really far too good. I think it would be probably important that we keep a secret how good these houses in Sao Paulo are, because they make a big problem for architects in the rest of Brazil, but also in the rest of the world. It actually should not be that much concrete can hang so beautifully. So it's really just an excuse to bring Angelo back. He's also a teacher in the FAO, one of the key schools of not just of the city of Sao Paulo, but also is very much the Sao Paulo school in the sense of the thinking of the architects. So I think it's really great to have these not so young architects pretend to still be young. They are doing incredibly beautiful work, and you can see, of course, outside in an exhibition curated by Ciro Perronde, who's the director of the other school, the kind of counter school, the kind of downtown funky school, the kind of anti-foul school, the sort of child of school, the kind of adolescent school, the kind of rebel school, and so on. Let's say the dialogue goes between these 2 schools, the established school in one of the most famous architecture buildings in the world, versus the school that's occupying like a kind of a squatter in the downtown. And between these 2 schools tonight, between Angelo as our moderator and Ciro as our curator, we keep this kind of sense of Brazil as much more than a country, as a kind of a landscape for real debate about the future of architecture. This is a fantastic laboratory in which simply some of the best architects in the world are exchanging, like in a tennis match, amazingly beautiful designs that have a lot of relevance for us here. I think in previous moments the beauty of the Brazilian architecture was almost like a problem. It was almost like a way of admiring the work of Brazilian architects, but not taking it so seriously, as if this beauty was somehow a tropical escape from the problems of the city, the social problems, economic problems, and so on. I think the vision now is much more complex, and it's really possible to understand much more carefully the way in which the intelligence needed in these houses and the intelligence needed in those cities has some kind of a dialogue. And that's very much been the spirit of this Brazil Week, and also of our school's interest in being deeply, literally in the, let's say, in the intellectual jungle of Brazil. So anyway, welcome to Angelo, who's here, and Ciro, who's here by way of his exhibition. It is also an amazing thing. If you look outside on those walls, this is only 10 years being monitored, and it's very much a selection. It's a highly edited selection of highly edited images of highly edited projects. So if you understand that this is just the tip of an iceberg, you understand that if you're an architect and you have not visited Brazil, then you're an idiot. And if you're an idiot, you should not be in this room. Right? So you have 1 year. I give you 1 year to go and have a look at this work, and then you can come back. Anyway, Angelo, welcome so much.
Mark, thank you very much for more than for this introduction, for the invitation. No, it's the nicest invitation that I ever had, because I came here just to enjoy some of my friends' presentation. and and I'm experiencing in a way a kind of new uh, feeling, because I feel the older man now introducing the young generation, and and I think that the young generation in any place around the world, they share more or less the same challenge. And it's like if they were the group that are exactly in the front of our activity. And the challenge is because we are uh, working in an activity that has to redefine every time what is its point, its subject, its body. It's it has to be new all the time. So we are here, of course, that we in Brazil we inherit a lot of those amazing works for modern architects in Brazil in that glorious time. Some of us had the privilege to be in touch with some of them at the university, but I feel that all these precedent, they would be like an institution. I mean, it would be maybe too cold and to be part of our life. So what is the way how those things could come to our life? I think that is this kind of group of friends, the people that are in the same place, almost the same room. And I think that the young generation has also this mission that is very, very nice. That is to provide to this institution that we inherit to the proper breath of life, this kind of fresh that the things has to have a meaning in our everyday life. So another challenge thing that I think that this young generation they face nowadays, and that is one of the I also I feel like that I'm telling to these guys that came here to lecture. I mean, like to suggest some topics maybe, but things that I think about. I think that we share nowadays a challenge that is to face lots of resource and a lack of meaning to do what we are doing. So I think that a very important task for an architect is to work very hard trying to find meaning in your work. We have thousands of requirements that does not fill our uh, our life or our existence. Or and when I think about that, and sometimes we could think that a place like Brazil could be closer to this meaning, but that's not exactly true, because it could be closer because in a place where we know very well our demands that we have to build millions and millions of houses, we could consider that we know more or less what we have to do. But it is not so true. So maybe we could consider that in Brazil we are more closer to the demands, that here it's more challenging to find the proper criteria to choose among these lots of resources that are much more than we need, that we have to use in one single project. And but I think that are two adds of the same problems, and the same problem exactly. This this question. So, and your choice, I think that was it was great. I mean, to invite to come here one architect from Rio, that, as you know, is the city where our Brazilian architecture was found by the action of a very small group of people. You know, the very remarkable role that was played by Lúcio Costa in this. It was so some. It's amazing to me, for instance, that Lúcio Costa, and one day he decided that the Brazilian modern president would be Le Corbusier. It was a decision. No, it's like if a group of people could decide uh, which inheritance we would like to have. And I think that actually we can choose these as well. And I think this is a quite modern condition. So to me, it's very remarkable that we have Celio Diniz here, that will is always think his work from this perspective, from this context in Rio. And Bruno Campos from Minas Gerais, and Silvio, that is also here from his office as well, or your office. With there is one more person. This is also another feature that to me is remarkable nowadays in Brazil. No, all the three offices that were invited to come here, they are made by a group of architects. This is a way that I think that the young generation in Brazil, they found this way to find a way to work. So it's a very it much more played by a group, much more like a manifest than something that is too made by an author. I think that the architecture now has this kind of very light way to be done. So in this group, they could sometimes be combined with other groups. No, in your work, it's not a complete disaster. It was just, but I mean, they are very flexible in general. So I think that you learn how to work in our context, and this is very important in our context because there is no other way to start be an architect in Brazil if not like founding in your own office to collaborate to some huge office maybe, or but not a huge office. Sorry, there is no huge offices in Brazil. I mean, to collaborate with a very remarkable architect sometimes, but mostly to work with his own peers that are the people that are sharing our everyday work. And Minas Gerais is interesting to be here as well because of course that Minas one more time played a very important role in our modern architecture. Uh, we could mention two things: Pampulha and Brasilia. That's not Minas Gerais, but was completely uh, made possible by Juscelino Kubitschek. And Minas again is interesting to be one other. I was just considering about. I think that there is another characteristic in Brazilian modern architecture that is the same group exactly that found this architecture in Brazil. They also are the group that found the historical architecture. And these two fields were very well merged in Minas Gerais as well. And of course that São Paulo nowadays it's maybe it's due to the like the worst reason, no, the social inequality in Brazil. That means that the people are completely inequality distributed in our lands, in our territory. And São Paulo has become a huge city, very interesting for an architect, but of course that it was made by very hard reason to our country. And São Paulo nowadays is still, I think that it is changing a little bit today, but it is still concentrate a lot of everything that we do in Brazil. It's very unequal. So to have Eduardo Ferroni here as well, I think that's very, very important. So, and the last thing that I'd like to add. Sometimes I feel that part of this foreign interest in Brazilian architect nowadays come because Brazil could be seen as a very isolated field where an architecture that was so important in the world in one time and that was put in cries in the whole world, there were preserved in a way. And so it's very hard to find another place where we can see those values still taking a very important role in architecture. This is true, I think, but this is not all. This is not the whole thing. I think that this approach is not I think that it makes sense, it's very well informed, but it's not easy to go to the thickness of our context, the reason why these things happen. That was not the best ones. And I think that this generation that we brought here today, they are very, like if we're for 20, 30 years trying to have the opportunity to talk in a more broad group of people. And so this is what we will be able to do at this time. And this is what Columbia, I think that is offering to this group of architects. And for that field that was isolated in a part of Brazil, it will represent, it's a thing that everyone will wish for this, but it will be, of course, it will bring lots of changing. And it's like a new time to our architecture because we are going to check if all the values, the principles that we trust so much can be validated in this kind of much more broad field. So, and I think that this is what we are going to see and try to talk a little bit tonight. So my suggestion is that we could follow the order that we have on the folder. So I would suggest to have Bruno Campos and Silvio Todeschi starting, after Celio, Diniz, and Eduardo Ferroni. Thank you.
sorry. Can you hear? Okay. So I'd like to thank the invitation from Columbia University. It's really a pleasure to be here. It's an honor, yeah, and we're really thrilled with the entire, Brazilian week, and also the presentations at the AAA and the APA, which is happening in this week. Benjamin's support and the consulate. Thank you all for coming also. So I was told we have 15 minutes, so I'll try to be brief in our presentation. So our practice is a very small practice. We are 8 people, 3 partners, me, Silvio, and Marcelo, who unfortunately couldn't come here. And right now, we just moved to this house. It's an incredible space for us now. We are sharing the space with 3 other practices. One is a landscape designer who helped us in the Pan American Games and also in the Rio 2016 Games, which is Vazio S.A. Carlos was also supposed to be here, but his is stuck in London because of the volcano. And there is a graphic designer who happens to be my girlfriend at this point, Mariana Hardy, which is very convenient for the graphic design part. And also the third practice, which is Fernando Maculan, a good friend of ours, and Marisa Machado Coelho. So we refurbished this house. It's a house from the 20s, and we have this lovely garden where we can have outdoor meetings when the weather is nice. We have also parties there, and on the first floor we have basically more private rooms, and second floor we have the common areas. And they built this shed, this double height space, which is a lofty space where we can have up to 30-40 people working here. So we also try also to use the space as a space for presentation. So we had what's the name of the guy who did the maps that went there? Sue, Garcia. That was here in the storefront art gallery like a couple of weeks ago. Forgot his name. He works at Henny Larsen, so he did a presentation there, and we had some British people also, curators. So it's a place that it's almost like a public space for lectures, and we try to keep it active when we're not working. So today, so we've been working mostly recently on large-scale projects, but today we decided to show a little bit of everything, so wouldn't give the impression that we only do large-scale schemes. So start with those furniture pieces. 10 years ago, I was an intern at Weisman Freddy Architects. So they were working on Uris Hall on the 3rd floor. It was the school centers or PhD centers, if I'm not mistaken. So they asked me to try to come up with a furniture piece that could be, easily stored and put away for a conference center, so that the space could still be flexible, so they use for other events as well. So I came up with this idea that like a single sheet of metal could be cut, and you would fold the pieces with some sort of hinges, and then you could, either hang it on the wall or put it away or even leave it on the floor. So I was struggling with the details of that for a week. Of course, I couldn't figure it out. I was looking at Jean Nouvel's piece of furniture for the Maison Cartier with all the complicated structure underneath to make it look like it was very thin on the tabletop, but I really couldn't make it. So in the end, Michael just said, and Marin, Bruno, that's very nice, but why don't we try something else? And so they proposed, and they did. That's their final design for the conference room, which is, of course, much more clever for the use of the space. You open up the table, and you can have book launches there with drinks on the other side. So this was I came here to Columbia and I was doing survey of the space, so I thought it was fun to show that. But when I came back to Brazil, I decided to resurrect my idea of the table that I couldn't develop there. So in this case now, I had to extrude the plank so it could be like a slab. In terms of structure, I could sew the details more easily. So the idea is I nicknamed it the tatami table. So it has the proportions of a tatami, 6 feet by 3 feet, and the basic module is a 3 inches square, and so I have the legs are 30 inches and the thickness is 3 inches. So you fold and unfold it in a way that you can basically carry it easily. So that's the final piece. It looks like it's a massive plank of wood, but only the legs are massive wood, and the tabletop is a very light structure covered with wood laminate, so it looks like a massive plank. And there is actually the legs work as a giant screw, so as you screw, they tighten it to an optimum position where they stand stable, and it forms those irregular tabletop designs. So this was the prototype I made at the time for my house and also for my practice. And then of course we did variations on that. This is the same table that when you get bored of one finishing, you can, change it. It's basically the same thing. So, and this is going into production, but the manufacturer asked it to be in a different proportion, so I thought it would sell better. So actually, this you will be able to fold it and carry in a kind of a bag out of the store, so it would be easily and kind of cheap, also like $200 at the most. So while I was doing this, I was also having other ideas about furniture. So and I was invited by another industry to design a table. It was a series of tables designed by architects. So this is the unstable. The idea is that the tabletop looks like it's not, it doesn't have really a surface to be on top of. So I tried to make it look very uncomfortable, that as if you would bump into it, the table would just fall apart. But actually, there is a quite complicated detail to make it look like that. So it's like a deception, really. So although it looks like it's going to, you can also pull the pieces and change the tabletop. So this was the only prototype they made, and it never went into production, but hopefully one day it will. So this house was developed by so it's a typical typology that we work, single family houses, I guess, every architect. And Angelo, thank you for the young one, because at this point we're all 40, so I don't know if we can make, as young architects, but Silvio's 41, I'm 40, and Marcelo is 38, sorry. So this house was done on the suburbs. So it's a typical program, a couple of kids, and it's quite common in Brazil to have this kind of middle class, upper middle class, hiring architects to make their own houses, which is more uncommon here in America, I suppose. The idea was basically to have, let me go back to the site. So the idea, there was an existing plateau, so we placed the house on the top of the plateau for views and also for privacy reasons. So actually, as you approach the house through this ramp, there is an 8-meter difference in terms of level. You don't really see the house until you get to the top, so you have a kind of a surprise to see the house there. So it's fairly simple. We have On the left-hand side, we have the living room, a double-height space with another space like a cube hanging on top, which is a TV room, and then you have the private rooms on the right-hand side, and the kitchen as a separate space. And on the second floor, the master bedroom. The nice thing about this house, I think, I mean, the only big deal, I think, is the TV room hanging on top. So the idea is that you know, you can close the space up and be totally separated from the house, so you won't have any noise or any disturbance happening. So, and it's also connected by to the master bedroom by this kind of catwalk. This is the view. I don't have a better photo of that, but the view when you're reaching the house up. So when you look at the pictures, you see literally the box hanging up, and it also makes this otherwise very monumental double height space. It gives some kind of intimate space underneath it, so it defines the place also, even if it's an open space. So you can see the box hanging out and the structure. This light overhang, or this light distance between the facade and the structure is a transition for light and rain, which might look not enough, but it's really something to have just like a meter. It's amazing how it can protect. And one thing also about this house, that's the view from the catwalk, reaching the box, and we don't really have control over the interior design, so those rugs and furniture was. And the good thing about this house also is that there are no doors, so no windows, sorry, so it's all doors. So whenever you slide the door, you're directly already on the ground, or on the veranda, or on the terrace. So it really has a feel sometimes of being, you know, outdoors and not really indoors. So this is one intervention in a favela that we're going to show, and Celio is going to present it. It's a favela in Belo Horizonte, which is that's the plan of the city, and Celio will take from here.
Good evening. It's a plan, a Google view of Belo Horizonte, our city, and you see on the top the Pampulha Lake with the famous Niemeyer work. You see the city ring, the original planned city 100 years ago, and how the city grew in this 100 years. And close to the city center, we have this Favela da Serra, and in the bottom you have the Curral Mountain. Is the limit of the city because of the mountain. Okay, this is Favela da Serra, typical favela in Brazil, and the municipality are working on a project called the Vila Viva project. It's one of the larger interventions in favelas in Brazil. They work in a series of favelas. In this Favela da Serra, there is the first project they are their implementation. This project, we have a lot of improvements. We have the road improvement, we have the sanitation improvements, and they are constructing, they are removing the families from the area of risk and moving them to this building, social housing. But the interesting, the people from favela are staying in the same place they belong. So they're not moving to far away from the center. They're still close to where they work. They're close to where their friends are, the neighbors are. And in this project, you have improvement in parks. You have a sport complex and water preservation. The streams of water are being this pollution. Have this pollution of remediation of the water streams. And they are planning to make 3 urban parks in this favela. This a Google photo from the H30 park, the park that we're working on, and it's in the middle, in the heart of favela. In the middle of it, we have the water stream. It's the fountainhead number 3 of the city, and the idea of the project is, the main idea is to preserve this green area in this park and make a space that people can live and play. And this is the plan of the park, with a series of facilities, annex park, playgrounds, a community center and sports center and things like that. And it's cut through the river. And only one project now is completed, is a community center. And the scheme is very simple because we have a low budget and a very tight schedule. So it's just a surface, a roof, under a metal structure, and below it the program, separating in blocks, because you have different functions for different people in different schedules. This is the plan. We have all the thing that happens in the building. The first floor plan, we have covered pages, open pages, kids room, kitchen, fitness room, hall. So we have young people, at the same time we have older people, and it goes this way. This is the second level. We have workshops, meeting rooms, administration, social assistant, computer room, administration, and go on. This is the model of the building. The idea is to build, firstly, the roof. So under the roof, you can continue the construction, protected by the rain, so the workers keep on going, and you can keep the schedule on time. This is a photo of this metal roof. There's a perforated steel plate, and you can see the interior through it, and the colors, this integration with the nature and the trees. You see the 2 types of construction, the steel construction, and underneath and below it a very low-cost, low-tech construction that go inside it. This is the perforated steel metal plate, page. This is the build completed. And it looks like a Photoshop, but it's the real thing. and the structures, it looks like unfinished, but that's the idea, because our idea to make it's a very open space that invites people to go inside it, and to integrate the inside and the outside. This is the covered picture inside. You have and the roof has this opening, so you frame the outside views. You see the trees, and sometimes you see the favela outside. That's it. Okay. Bruno is going to continue. Thank you.
So the Pan American Games in 2005, we started to design. The Deodoro cluster. This is on the north zone of Rio, which is a kind of a suburban area, not the kind of American suburbs. The definition of the meaning of suburbs in Rio, it's quite different. It's really like a working class area. This is one of the poorest area in Rio, and it's a very unique context. We have here on this side we have really a favela. It's a neighborhood called Magalhães Bastos. You could see the irregular, the organic organization of the settlement. Here we have a military village with its neatly organized pavilions and buildings, and here we have those incredible, fields of polo that the military used to practice, and it's basically carpets of green grass, and in the back of this area, some mountains with lush forests, and also in this area. So all this area is cut through Avenida Brasil, which is a sort of a hybrid between a highway and a motorway. So at the same time, it unites, the boroughs. It separates the area. So we did. Today we're talking about just the shooting center, just to be quick. But we did the equestrian center and the modern pentathlon, the grass hockey, and the archery fields as well. So this is the site plan, the same. The idea is to have a cluster connected by pathway, so you can spend the entire day there during the games. And also, this has triggered a renovation of the entire area with improvement of infrastructure and urban fixtures as well. So this is the shooting center. This is basically a series of pavilions, shooting ranges connected by a spine circulation. For some reasons, they all have to face south. So you have the entrance of the building, towards the directions of the shooting, which is quite dramatic when they're practicing or when there is competitions. You're all actually entering through the line of fire. And so we have this long building. Overall, we have almost like 1 kilometer from one point to another. The building has 50,000 square meters. This is a Google Earth recently. Looks like a drawing with plan with the shadows. It's quite amazing. There are a photo with the mountains in the back, and so this is just like the overall organization of the shooting center. It's pretty like a diagram, actually. We have the spine of circulation connected to the shooting ranges, and the public go up the ramp and they flow independently from the accredited, which all go from a separate entrance, and so you don't have a mixture of flows in terms of accredited security, athletes, and operations, and the public who has paid tickets. So it's a night view. You can see the landscape on the back and kind of a floating overhang of this trap and skeet, and that's another image of the entrance. It's basically concrete, exposed concrete. When we do buildings, public buildings, we try to, our strategy is to make sure there are no details or not really no details, but there is no accessories. So everything is crucial. Let's say, for instance, that when the structure is done, the architecture is done. Because from our experience, otherwise, things because of budget adjustments, they don't get done. So in this case, we have basically exposed concrete, the steel frame, and the corrugated roof, turning around, becoming a wall, and glass and the wood baffles, which actually have a reason. They're here to prevent the bullets from escaping from the fields of play. So in this section, you see, this is where the accredited, flow, the public flows here, and they go straight into the stands, from up here, and the athletes go from the lower level. And this is the main concourse, very stark, as you can see. And so we try just to have, light and air and circulation and open to the landscape. And those are the shooting baffles, 2 inches thick of wood. So this is supposed to be, destroyed with time, but the shooters, they don't really miss the target, actually. So, that's an impressive image of the field of play. There's an indoor stand that is the only one that needs air conditioning, so we could face him south. So this is like a lounge area. So we try also to in Brazil it's possible to have this, outdoor activities and this transition spaces between inside and outside. We always try to work with that because the weather allows it to happen. It's very nice to be, indoors and outdoors at the same time. So this is the grandstand of the trap and skeet. Very simple also, with the steel rods in the back holding the overhand, and a huge concrete wall, and that's it. For the in 2008 we were hired by the Olympic Committee to be responsible for the architecture and landscape of the Rio 2016 bid. So we worked exclusively on that for almost a year and a half, and yesterday we presented the master plans of the 4 clusters, and at the APA. So we presented the Barra da Tijuca cluster, the Deodoro. This is the Barra da Tijuca cluster, by the way. The Deodoro cluster, Copacabana, and also the Maracanã clusters. And that's a view of the Olympic Park. Since we talked about it yesterday, we're just mentioning that we did that. And on Friday, we'll have at the Center for Architecture, we'll talk about some of the buildings from the Olympic bid, the IBC-MPC, which is this image, the Media Press Center and the International Broadcast Center, and the Aquatics Center, and also the ITC, the Indoor Training Center. So if whoever is interested, it's on Friday at 6 p.m. at this. So thank you.
First, I would like to thank you for this opportunity, especially Mr. Mark Wigley and Benjamin Broski. It's a great honor to be here. In fact, when I was invited to be here, I was planning to study here, so you can imagine how I feel now. Somehow I feel like presenting my work to a professor in a final review. I hope I go well. My name is Celio Diniz, and I am partner in the office DDG Arquitetura, which was founded in 2001. After we won the Circo Voador contest. And since its foundation, the firm has been involved in a wide variety of project scales, since houses to an entire neighborhood. Nowadays, we are 6 architects and 2 trainees sharing 60 square meters space based in Rio de Janeiro. I'd like to talk about our method of work, different from the regular way. We try to understand the project as a kind of spiral path that allows us to go rounding until we achieve the final objective that should be a good project in accordance to our climate conditions. The spiral method lets us review the strategies of the project that may be wrong according to the environmental comfort modeling. And I would like to present two projects in more details, and then I will just show some pictures of others projects. First, I will present the Circo Voador, and then the Cruzeiro School. During the 80s, Circo Voador was an important concert venue with an informal and breezy atmosphere. It was significant to the city because it was responsible for launching a great number of Brazilian rock bands. And despite its importance, Circo Voador was closed by the City Hall in 1996 because its facilities didn't provide the acoustic protection required to ensure comfort to the neighboring residents. In 2001, in response to many requests, the City Hall decided to reopen the space, but now with a proper soundproofing. So a national competition was launched and we won it. And wondering how the new Circo Voador should be, we started to think about music, dance, and movement, because naturally music and dance deals with movement. And especially because the name Circo Voador means flying circles, this movement should be a movement of circles preparing to fly. And this movement should generate a kind of vortex that would affect the other buildings around it. So we tried to apply movement in all architectural elements around the main space. This is the main space. And we tried to freeze this movement as shown in this pictogram. This is the contest modeling. This is the main entrance, the main space, dressing rooms. This building is for administration and restrooms, a kind of balcony, the second space, and the bar. This is the final rendering. And this is the CD front cover of Franz Ferdinand's concert. It's interesting to see how architecture was perceived and by the design, as you know. This is the main entrance. The back facade with those perforated concrete walls that were supposed to be painted by graffiti artists. Here the administration building, and in the back the dressing rooms building. Both protected from the west sun. Here again the perforated concrete walls designed by us. And here the main space with that space was designed to support an audience of 1,500 people. And we wanted every internal and external spaces connected to each other. Covering the main area with a tensile membrane was a premise of the contest, despite its poor acoustic performance. And in order to solve this problem, we designed a second membrane beneath the main one, and composed of insulating materials and settled in different positions. And here, all the 1,500 people near to the stage. And here the stage. This is another project. It's the Cruzeiro School, a project of 10,000 square meters addition to Cruzeiro School headquarters, based in Rio too, that we made as Michael Lars partners. This project has won some awards, such as the second prize in the Latin American phase of the whole scene award for sustainable construction and others. Here I'd like to show the sun path on the left, the sun path of the city Rio de Janeiro, just to show the need of protection even in the south facades. And here we have the temperatures of from 61 to 90 in Rio, and the temperatures of New York last year. So it's completely different, and we don't have to be concerned about the lower temperatures. But in fact, the temperatures have increased so much since 19th that achieved 122 degrees Fahrenheit last January. It means higher temperatures than some desert areas, but unfortunately with warm nights too. And when we were invited to design this sustainable school, we started to think about our modernist heritage and how these architects used to project in accordance to our climate. And we realized that we lost those appropriate solutions, such as brise-soleil, pilotis, the correct orientation of buildings, natural ventilations. And this is the site already prepared with different plateaus to receive a building in many levels, as the client was expecting. But we decided to project the building following the sun path orientation to avoid heat gains in east and west facades, which made the site plan and space between the building richer. Talking about program, here we have the main entrance. This space distributes the flow between the two wings and other spaces. Oh, sorry. In the second floor, administration. Here we have an auditorium, the labs, the classrooms in those two wings, And in a central position, the library connecting the two wings in front of a garden, internal garden. And these schemes show us the strategies we've adopted to improve the environmental comfort in the internal and external spaces. Here is a detailed section of one wing showing how the facade's elements work. A quick animation. I hope it works. You can see it in YouTube if you want. We have a channel there. And just a few images of other projects. This is the ferryboat station, Praça 15 ferryboat station. It's an arena. I might talk about it on Friday. The Circo Voador Day Nursery. I will present this project too on Friday. This is a penthouse in a very important building, modernist building, designed by Jorge Moreira, called Cepas Building, with a great view of Corcovado. This is our last project. We finished 2 weeks ago. It's the Marina Gloria, for the Marina Gloria contest. We have a high limitation. We couldn't go beyond 15 meters. And here the sugar loaf, as you know. We tried to do a very flat building. This is the main entrance. It's a kind of a sports and business facility. I think more business than sport facility. Here we have the Gloria Hotel in the back. Another entrance. Internal view. That's it. Thank you very much.
Good evening. I'm Eduardo Ferroni. And first of all, I'd like to say that I'm still 33, so I can be a little bit more relaxed about the mistakes that I might show. So, but I would like to start, I would like to thank first Columbia University for the invitation, to say that it's a pleasure to be here with my friends, and I would like to compliment Bruno Campos and Celio Diniz for the very impressive work. that you showed tonight for us. I'd like to start this presentation talking a little bit about our practice and the way we organize ourselves as a group. We work in what we call a cooperative of architects, which means basically that there's a number of small offices, generally with 2 or 3 partners, all working within the same space, which is this, it's a commercial gallery. My firm, which is called H&F, is part of this cooperative. We have been working together for 8 years in different arrangements, also with other more established offices, and we have taken advantage of exchanging ideas in this more informal way, let's say. As we don't have too much time, and I wouldn't like to extend myself, I'm going only to present some of this, the place that we work, and also only 2 projects. So I put the website here for those who might be interested in see some of our other work. Also, I'd like to say that the architects that presented tonight are exposing here, and also we have one building there exposed, and it's an honor to participate on this exhibition also for us, for the young. Let me put the other. Our office is located in a very particular urban situation in the center of São Paulo. This is the whole center of the old center of the city. This area where we work, this is more the place where we work, is densely occupied by modern high-rise buildings from the 30s through the 70s. But all of them are implanted into these very narrow and irregular plots from the 19th century. But I would like to show a plan, which is this, because what I think is the interesting point about these buildings is that they have established a new net of pedestrian walkways, which you see on this plan, which functions as commercial galleries on the ground floors of each building, while in the upper floors there are offices, apartments, hotels, and so on. But in this place where there's a huge concentration of people, these buildings offer a new ground of public spaces, in this case, a kind of city inside the old existing city. This building here is the famous Copan building designed by Oscar Niemeyer. I live on this place here, and I walk through here and I go work on this other building here. So we have our office in this building, which also is a commercial gallery. This is Copan building. This is the ground floor, which is very interesting, with this slope, slab. Is that right? Slope, slab. It's a ground floor. Very interesting. And this is the place where we work. It's called Galeria Metrópole. It's another building from the 60s. And of course, these are not new architectural ideas. But I think that for us it works as a very up-to-date example of how architecture can create a strong and active interface with the city. So, in this sense, the project that I would like to present tonight reflects somehow on this concern of the urban interface of the building. So this first project here is we had just designed it for a competition. We are still waiting for the results, but I can show you. It's not a problem. It's, no, now it's open. But it is it was designed for a new Presbyterian church in the Asian neighborhood of Liberdade. This is a picture of Liberdade, next to the center of São Paulo. And this church will be built by this community who has recently immigrated to Brazil, and for whom the whole church works as a strong social and cultural reference in a foreign city for them. The temple itself is therefore associated with many other facilities like restaurant, nursery, school, and sports. And nowadays, these programs are dispersed in small plots all along the street, creating a very special situation in the city, where this very closed community appears in the public space and the street becomes a kind of living room for them. So this is the existing church, the street, and the sports here, and they all open to the street and they gather here. So they bought a bigger plot of land here, which is on the other side of the street, and to expand their activities and to build a new church in this place. And our aim is now to intensify this presence of the various programs on the street, bringing the public sidewalk into the interior of the block, which is here, and also trying to connect both streets. So we split the program into 3 separate buildings rising up from a common basement, which is here, which accommodates car parking, restaurant, and administration. And this is the church, which is implanted flush with the street. And this is the old existing church. So we try to implant the whole volumes in order to create an access from the old church to this space here. And this open space inside the plot should function as a kind of a churchyard that concentrates the access to the main collective programs. The ground floor is split into 2 levels. From the street one can either step up to the churchyard or go down a soft slope to the restaurant, which is here. And the narrow building, which on the corner with the main street, supposed to represent a more public face of the church to the Korean community and the church to the city. So this building is placed in order to open the perspective from the corner of the main street to the church. And on the ground floor there's a gallery for public events and exhibition. On the upper levels of the same building there are the cabinets for the preacher, so you see a preacher here. A very charming. So this third building here on the back, which we thought as being quite independent and different from the others, will accommodate the lecture rooms, nursery school, and other supporting functions. And it also provides the connection with the lower street, which is on the other side. It's a sort of public connection. The interior, these are some images from the entrance, someone going up and to this churchyard. This is the old church, the access to the new church. And the temple that we thought that could be very simple, just with some light openings. There's a light shed on the back of this textile. There's very interesting Korean textile work And the core, how do you say this? Chorus, yeah. It's a kind of outside volume that intercepts the church from the outside, and there's some light that comes from the bed from the side wall. And we thought that would be very interesting to bring some unexpected light for the gospel Korean singers like this. So on the second project which I would like to show is a school that it's a public school which was designed in partnership with this another office here called Barossi and Nakamura, and it's part of a program for the construction of hundreds of new public schools in the state of São Paulo. This is the whole metropolitan area of the city of São Paulo. This is like 80 kilometers, 40. These white dots are the new schools all implanted in the outskirts, and they represent an important reference for these poor outskirts of the cities where most of them are implanted, not only in the city of São Paulo, because generally there's a great lack of public facilities in those places. So in order to have a standard quality for the construction of these schools, the government has adopted a very ordinary precast concrete structure, which is actually more commonly used for warehouses. This is the school, this is not a warehouse, but when you look at the entire set of schools designed by different architects, there are some interesting variations in the use of these rough materials and construction details. The neighborhood where the school was implanted is a slum which was recently reurbanized. It consists mostly of low-rise but extremely dense occupation. There are very few collective spaces remaining, as you can see in this picture. So the government planned to build 2 schools and a health center on the last empty plot of land, which is this inside the square, on the mouth of the river. This is the main river of São Paulo, but we are very far in the east. But this site was quite small for the commission, for the 3 facilities actually. We were commissioned with one of the schools, and the other was to be designed by this friend of ours, which also was our former professor, very generous guy, Antônio Carlos Barossi. He teaches at USP with Angelo Bucci. And we decided to put both schools into one building and to do the project together. So in order to achieve a more compact occupation and to create more open spaces on the site. The main difference between the 2 programs is the age of the pupils, the children, you know. So we decided that the younger children should have more outdoor spaces for recreation time. This is the yellow school for the younger children. And for the older children, we built sports hall and recreation on the top of the whole building. So can you see? There's a pink thing here. So this is the school for the older children. This is for the small children. So one goes onto the top of the other. And in order to distinguish one school from the other, we created a void between them that also shows the vertical dimension of the building from the inside. These are the plans and a section here. The facades were built with very simple tile blocks as a sunbreaker detached from the windows, that took much time to build. And from the outside, the sun breakers gives a sense of unity to these internal variations of the building. And there's also a kind of play with the opacity and transparency depending on the light conditions. And the building acts now as a kind of reference to this entire neighborhood as its main public equipment, because it's all very low, so the building appears from everywhere. So this is people go, the boys going to school, and the building's always appearing. And this, at the entrance of the school, there's a small square where the parents and the children gather, and the reception desk, all the spaces here open directly to this square. There are about approximately 1,000 students attending these schools, and these are some pictures that people going inside the building, and this is the children going up. So this is the recreation area for the older children. And this is a set of other schools, just to finish, because I think it's interesting to show that we have been designing for the same government program in different situations. But I think that maybe what matters here is the whole range of new schools built in quantities to comply with this immense depth of public education. So in the exhibition that you see outside, there are very interesting schools designed for the same program, designed by many other architects. So that's it that I wanted to show. Thank you.
Please, Bruno and Silvio. Silvio, please. No, we have a very short time now, but anyway, we'd like to open if you have any question for our presenters tonight. Please.
You were showing these sun pad diagrams, and I was wondering what are the humidity conditions over there?
What is what?
Humidity. You were showing these waterfalls. Humidity.
It's very high. It's kind of 80%. Specifically in Rio de Janeiro. And you know, it's a bad, a very big problem. When you have the humidity with warm conditions.
Well, I think that what you saw in the presentation general were projects that built in always in different condition, some, but I think that they can give us a very good panorama to show what's the work that architects are engaged in Brazil at this time. I mean, there are some actions those that are much more promoted abroad, no, the Olympic Games, that is something that is just starting, or the project that Celio showed us that came from competition in Rio. It's not Brazil after the end of the dictatorship period. Of course, that architecture is start to recover some space that we used to have to discuss, to publish, to architecture in Brazil. And competition there is something that just start after that time. So we are still, I think, creating a culture about this very important space, mostly for young architects, no? And the presentation that was made by Eduardo Ferroni, if I take one work as well, of course that the public school that he showed us and said that it is just one school in more than 100 school that are spread in the whole São Paulo state. It shows an action of our government there in Brazil that create a way to invite some architects to design those schools. Please.
Andrew, I really want to thank you guys for coming here. You know how much I enjoy Brazil and being with all of you. But you said at the very beginning of your conference, Angelo said that to be an architect you have to have a concept, no? You have to have an idea of what you want to express with your building and your profession. So I'd like to know to any one of you who wants to answer, how do you think you're building upon that modern tradition you've inherited? And in what way have you differentiated from it and are building your own concept of what Brazilian architecture could be?
Sorry, I think this is a very difficult question. Maybe I don't feel capable of answering, but I would like to say something with it. No, I think that more than express, I should say that I'm more interested in provide some situations that I think that there are very interesting examples in modern Brazilian architecture, but also in many other. But because we're talking about Brazilian architecture, I think it gives many interesting examples of how architecture can create a more interesting city. So, in my opinion, that is more to provide something than to express. I'm not so interested in that, I would say, but I'm not so. It's only my idea, the idea that I have now about this very difficult question.
Just want to say, just quickly, as you know, Brazil is full of contrasts and sometimes shocking dualities and the mixture, and which is part of its charm for sure. But sometimes it can become quite a mess. And the only thing that we don't really, I mean, I'm speaking for myself. We don't really have a strategy or a method which is very rigorous. We just try to do it in a way that we don't celebrate it or we don't go against it. So this is a thin line that we are always trying to do, not to fix a situation which is almost like unfixable, and not, you know, to also be celebrating a sort of very extreme contrast that can be very interesting but also very problematic. So we are always dealing with those issues, and particularly what we try to do is basically we're very interested also in the one of the very good things about working in Brazil is that you can work on the inside, on the outside, and have this transition between the inside and the outside in a much fluid way than in other climates. So this is also something that we have to do. But São Paulo school, as Angelo mentioned, it's much more. You have like more method and more structure, so to speak. So I think there was this exhibit called Beyond Encore Moderne in Paris, right? Which could be either flattering or also like it could be not flattering at all, because it's still modern. So I thought it was being French, you know, the title of the exhibit. For me, I didn't see it as a flattering comment, but it might be, because we all love the, you know, the modern classics of Brazilian architecture. So we're still in this striving to go beyond modern, I think.
Could I say one thing? When makes me remember when I came to here, when I was arriving in the airport, the border security guy asking what we'll do here, all those questions, and I explained I will be part on an event of to talk about Brazilian architecture, and he asked me, okay, and what is the Brazilian architecture? And I told him it's better you go there and find out with me, because it's a very difficult question to. We have a lot of different scenarios, so we don't have anymore a Brazilian architecture as we used to have in the past. We have different ways of architecture, I guess.
Well, I think even in the past that the architecture was different in any case. You know, it wasn't just one Brazilian architecture. I mean, it was maybe presented like that, but it wasn't really, if you look at it carefully. And the one thing that I find very refreshing and remarkable is the directness of the work, and the proportional, this feeling for the proportion of space and for public space. I mean, I think those things, you know, you sort of in different ways all have in common, you know. And that directness and commitment to public space, I think, is, it's really refreshing, I think, very refreshing. And that aspect in many ways has been lost, I think, as a sort of responsibility that the profession should have to the society. And I find that very impressive. And this use of the school buildings as a kind of reassertion of a hope in a way, and also as a sort of public core for these favelas, etc. You know, it's really very, very impressive.
I think that our time is over. No, and I just like to add. No, there is no better way to finish than with a comment by Frampton. That well, thank you so much.
Thank you, Ken, for summing up, and thank you, everyone, to our panel. I would like to say that our local Brownies has done their best with some Brazilian appetizers outside. Please enjoy the exhibit curated by Ciro Parandi and the work from Brazil. And please, there's another event at Studio X tomorrow, an exhibit, and there's a final panel on the architecture of the Olympics on Friday. So we hope to keep seeing you this week. Thank you for coming.